When I was 6 years old, my first grade teacher had this brilliant idea. She wanted us to experience receiving gifts, but also learning the virtue of complimenting each other. So she had all of us come to the front of the classroom and she bought all of us gifts and stacked them in a corner. What a wonderful idea, right? What could go wrong? Well, there were 40 of us to start with, and every time I heard someone's name called. And then there were 20 people left, and 10 people left, and 5 left, and 3 left. And I was one of them. The compliment stopped. Now at that moment, I was crying, and the teacher was freaking out. She was like, "Hey, would anyone say anything nice about these people?" No one? Okay. Why don't you get your gift and sit down? Behave next year. Someone might say something nice about you. The American Psychological Association states that, as far as the brain is concerned, a broken heart may not be so different from a broken arm. We've all experienced rejection in some shape or form, whether it's being the last person picked for the dodgeball team during PE or your crush not liking you back. Getting rejected, even once, can put our lives at a halt, keeping us from thriving. But it's time we stopped living in the shadows of rejection and learned to use it as a driving force for our own betterment. What I learned from 100 Days of Rejection, a TED Talk by Jia Jiang. Fast forward 8 years, Bill Gates came to my hometown to speak. And I fell in love with that guy. I thought, wow, I know what I want to do now. So that night, I wrote a letter to my family telling them that by age 25, I will build the biggest company in the world. And that company will buy Microsoft. Then, fast forward another 14 years. I was 30. Nope, I didn't build that company. I didn't even start. But why is that? Where's that 14-year-old boy who wrote that letter? Every time I had a new idea, every time I wanted to try something new, I felt there was this constant battle between the 14-year-old and the 6-year-old. One wanted to conquer the world. Another was afraid of rejection. And every time that 6-year-old won. This fear persisted until I decided that I can't let that 6-year-old keep dictating my life anymore. I have to put him back in his place. So this is where I went online and looked for help. I found this website by luck. It's called rejectiontherapy.com. Rejection therapy was this game invented by a Canadian entrepreneur. And basically, the idea is for 30 days, you go out and look for rejection, and every day you're rejected at something. And then by the end of it, you desensitize yourself from the pain. And I loved that idea. I said, you know what? I'm going to do this. And I'll feel myself getting rejected for 100 days. Day 1. Borrow $100 from a stranger. So I went to where I was working and I came downstairs and saw this big guy sitting behind a desk. He looked like a security guard. So I just approached him and I was just walking and oh my, that was the longest walk in my life. Hair on the back of my neck standing up. I was sweating and my heart was pounding and I got there and said, "Hey, sir, can I borrow $100 from you?" And he looked up. "No. Why?" And I said, I'm sorry. And I ran. I felt so embarrassed. So that night, I was watching myself getting rejected and I saw how scared I was. I looked like this kid in The Sixth Sense. I saw dead people. Every time I felt the slightest rejection, I would just run as fast as I could. But you know what? The next day, no matter what happens, I'm not going to run. I'll stay engaged. Day 2. Request a burger refill. This is when I went to a burger joint. I finished lunch and I went to the cashier and said, "Hey, can I get a burger refill?" He was all confused. "What's a burger refill?" And I said, "Well, it's just a drink, but with a burger." And he said, "Sorry, we don't do burger refills, man." I could have run, but I stayed. I said, "Well, I love your burgers, I love your joint, and if you guys do a burger refill, I will love you guys even more." And he said, "Well, okay, I'll tell my manager about it and maybe we'll do it, but sorry, not today." And then I left. And by the way, I don't think they've ever done burger refills. The life and death feeling I was feeling the first time was no longer there, just because I stayed engaged. And then I learned I could fulfill my life dream just by asking. I came from 4 generations of teachers, and my grandma's always told me, "You can be anything you want, but it'd be great if you became a teacher." It's always been my life dream to actually teach something. So I said, what if I just ask and teach a college class? I lived in Austin at the time, so I went to the University of Texas at Austin and knocked on professors' doors and said, "Can I teach your class?" I didn't really get anywhere the first couple of times, so I kept doing it. And on the third try, the professor was very impressed. He was like, "Wow, no one has ever done this before." And I came in prepared with my PowerPoints and my lessons. He said, "Wow, I can use this. Why don't you come back in 2 months? I'll fit you in my curriculum." And 2 months later, I was teaching a class. And when I finished teaching that class, I walked out crying because I thought I could fulfill my life dream just by simply asking. I used to think that I have to accomplish these things, have to be a great entrepreneur or get a PhD to teach, but no. I just asked and I could teach. In my research, I found that people who really change the world, who change the way we live and the way we think, are people who were met with often and initial violent rejections. People like Martin Luther King Jr., Mahatma Gandhi, Nelson Mandela, or even Jesus Christ. These people did not let rejection define them. They let their own reaction after rejection define themselves. And they embraced rejection. Now, we don't have to be those people to learn about rejection. And in my case, rejection was my curse, my boogeyman. It has bothered me my whole life just because I was running away from it. But then I just started embracing it. I turned that into the biggest gift in my life. So when you get rejected in life, when you're facing the next obstacle or the next failure, consider the possibilities. Don't run. If you just embrace them, they might become your gifts as well.